Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to another video. My name is Edward and today we're going to be talking about the Sony a7II and if it's still worth buying in 2021. Spoiler alert, yeah. So when talking about the Sony a7II, I won't be reading off spec sheets because you'll be able to find that everywhere on YouTube right now. This review will be more towards personal use, hands-on, and how the camera actually functions in a real-world scenario, and just my personal experience with using it. This is a more older camera. This camera was released in December of 2014. Just a really quick history lesson. When the Sony a7 Mark II was released, it was designed to be in the middle of the pack. The other cameras that was released with it around the same time was the Sony a7R Mark II and the Sony a7S Mark II. The S line is geared more towards video, and the Sony a7R Mark II was released geared more towards photographers. And that's where this guy comes in. It doesn't quite do video as well as the S, and it doesn't do still images as well as the R, and it's also the cheapest out of all three. It doesn't do each as well as the S and the R, but it still is a great value for 2021. The Sony a7 Mark II is a full frame, 24 megapixel image body stabilization. It has all these things packed into it. And you can find these things on the used market right now, anywhere in between $700 to $1,000, which is ridiculous. It has eye autofocus, but it doesn't have eye autofocus in continuous mode, but the eye autofocus in still mode is amazing. I've used it on many shoots. The other thing that I like about this camera, and pretty much all Sony cameras, is the menu tab. So many people complain about the menu being so overwhelming because there's so many options, but I look at this as a plus because you can customize it to your own liking, and there's nothing better than having a camera that can fit your needs and that you can customize it for the things that you want it to do. I mean, there's so many custom pages in this thing, it can almost be overwhelming, but if you just take the time to get to know the camera, the menu system is great. There are so many great things about this camera, but no camera goes without its flaws. One is the SD card slot. There's only one of them instead of two. So you just want to keep that in mind before purchasing this camera. A way around this is while you're in the field shooting is to continue to switch your SD cards if you're shooting a wedding or an event that's a once in a lifetime moment. It'll give you more room just in case a card malfunctions or fails on you. But to be honest, out of the 2 years that I've had this camera, I've never had an SD card fail on me while photographing any event or wedding. The next thing that's not so great is the battery life. The battery life goes so quickly, but again, there's always ways around this. What I use is the Valo battery grip, which allows you to have 2 batteries in your camera at once. And the batteries for the a7 Mark II are so cheap. You can find great deals online on Amazon for 4 of them for $30. I'll leave a link in the description of this battery grip. Another shortcoming of this camera is that it doesn't shoot 4K in video mode. Just 1080p is the highest that it goes. So many people make a big deal about transitioning into 4K, but 1080p is way more than enough, I promise you. 4K is nice to have, but it's not a necessity in 2021. There's so many great filmmakers out there still shooting in 1080p. Overall, the Sony a7 Mark II is a great value for photographers and videographers. It's a full-frame 24 megapixel camera that captures images just amazingly, and video as well. I get it, the latest cameras are better in every single way, but just because newer models of cameras get better doesn't make the older models get worse. These are still great and you can still use these for professional work. If you're looking to get in the Sony full-frame ecosystem, I highly recommend the Sony a7 Mark II. Here's some images that I've captured with the Sony a7 Mark II. These are photos from Evelyn and Nate's maternity session. This was a very fun day, a very easy day. The weather was nice. It was cool outside. It was an overcast day, so it was very ideal for photographing, and you couldn't ask for a better day to shoot. These are images I shot with a local blogger. Her name is Alexa, and this shoot was actually very challenging. It was very cold, about 15 degrees, even though you can't tell. And it was also very sunny, so a lot of shadows and a lot of harsh light. So yeah, it was challenging, but the camera held up well in the cold, and yeah, came out with some great images. These are images from Leslie's senior session, and as you can tell, she's influenced by music. This was a fun but also very challenging photo shoot. It was about 95 degrees outside. It was also very sunny, so we had to look for things to block the sun, like that building right there, or in this image above her head that was helping block the sun to kill some of the harsh shadows. And these are images of her between buildings, but yeah, held up great in the heat and didn't overheat. These are images from Renee and Adam's wedding that I shot with the Sony a7 Mark II. And you guys, I wouldn't hesitate to use this camera on a wedding. This camera performed great for me. I had no issues whatsoever. And yeah, weddings can be challenging because you're dealing with different light scenarios, because you start in the morning, you end at night, so there's all different types of variables in weddings and all types of photography, whether you're photographing food, people, landscape of the venues. And again, I wouldn't hesitate to use this camera on a wedding. It worked great. And last but not least, these were images from a battle rap event that I shot with the Sony a7 Mark II, and it held up great in low light situations. I was able to pull the shadows very easily without grain being introduced. The camera is just a beast, and like I was saying before, I wouldn't hesitate to use this camera in low light situations or any other situations. Thanks for watching, guys, and if you found any value in this video, give it a like and subscribe. And comment below if you've had a chance to use the Sony a7 Mark II, and just let people who haven't know how awesome of a camera this is. This camera falls short in so many ways as well. It has... I probably won't say that. I'll just say... No, I'll just say no camera is perfect without flaws. But to be honest, out of the 3 years that I've had this camera, out of the 2 years that I've had this camera,